businesses, and I guess this is a good time for us to relax and learn. So I'm Aris. I'm from Cebu City. I work as an engineer, and I'll be your host for tonight. So welcome to our 8 p.m. healthy, wealthy, and wise habit. So this online event is made possible by CCG Philippines, a leadership search and development company. Tonight's event is part of our Career Crash Course series, where we share insights and learnings from the best selling books on leadership, entrepreneurship, personal growth, and development. But before we begin, I have some few reminders. I, I just want to let you know that you are all muted. That's just for sound quality and just for the excellent flow of our event. But we highly encourage you to turn on your video. So we want to see you virtually just to add some personal touch with this event. And also just a reminder that we'll have a breakout session later. So we have a small discussion with friends, of course, based on the books, based on the learning you get tonight. And I also encourage you to use the chat box, so you can. I highly encourage you to share your name, where you're from, what's your occupation, what you're doing. Probably I'll try to do a shout out. Some of you already start typing, so welcome. Uh, Paul and Lucy from Cainta, a leadership facilitator. We have Elvidu from Davao City. Elvira do share that she really love our book sharing. We have Helen Fuerzas, a teacher from Davao City. Then what else here? Okay. Uh, we have Jonel Banyas, an IT professional from Manila. We have Ian Adela, maayong gabi, from Cebu City. Then we have Doc Rico Santos from Marikina. Then we have Titus Manuel, an IT and data privacy practitioner from Quezon City. We have Suzette from Cebu, has accounting background, a full-time wife now. Then we have Ken Rose Tapdasan, senior accountant from Mandawi City. Guys, keep your greetings coming. We really appreciate sharing your background here, sharing where you're from. But I don't want to take much time over speaker. I'm really excited to listen to her tonight. We're so blessed to have her. So actually, our speaker is the current country manager of Amway Philippines. She is also the chairman of HADSUP. It's Health and Dietary Supplement Association. And he also belongs to an international association. She is the auditor of ASEAN Alliance of Health Supplement Association. Friends, with your clap and thumbs up reaction button or through the chat box, please help me give a warm virtual welcome to Miss Lenny Olmedo.
Thank you very much for that intro, Arias, and thank you to CCG for inviting me to this book sharing. Be kind to me. It's my first time to share a book, right? And I'm happy to share this with you. I was actually looking through some of the books that I've been reading. I'm actually a nerd by nature, and I just felt that among the books that Adam Grant has already written, he has one also that's really, really good, originals. I felt that this one, Give and Take, is something that actually would be very relevant to most of us who are in this room right now. I was actually just sharing with the smaller group earlier that this book sharing is just happens to come at a very a very good time, because it aligns very well with what we're doing with Amway currently. We're just rolling out our culture transformation. We're calling it the Leading with the Founder's Growth Mindset, actually with three basic principles: lead with heart, live to serve, and love to learn. So remember, love to learn, diba? That's exactly what you're doing here as a team right now. So, and I see that there are a lot of parallels with the concepts of the book with what we're actually doing along the culture journey that we're doing in Amway right now. So happy to be here, happy to see a lot of familiar faces. A lot of you are smiling right now. So just let me know if I'm, some concepts that I'm sharing are not too clear. Just raise your hand. I'll also be asking you a few questions. So just I am looking forward to a happy engagement throughout this book sharing. So before I introduce the book, I actually saw someone commented that Adam Grant seems to be an academician, and he is. So let me just introduce the author. Okay, so it's not moving now. It did my wait lang ha. Brian, I think my froze already. There you go. Right. So because usually before you read the book, you want to find out about the author because you want to know if he's a credible source of information, right? And Adam Grant, although he's obviously U35, he's an organizational psychologist from the Wharton School of Business. He's an author of best-selling books, Give and Take, Originals, Option B, and he currently hosts Work Life, a TED original podcast. For 6 straight years, he's the top-rated professor at Wharton. So actually, there are more bullets before I edited this slide. But as you can see, he is even at his age, he has raked a lot of recognition already. World's 10 most influential management thinkers, Fortune's 40 under 40. His books sold over 1 million copies and translated into 35 languages. He's the young global leader as recognized in World Economic Forum. He was tenured at Wharton while he was still in 20s, and for every class that he taught, he received the Excellence in Training in Teaching Award. He also earned his Doctor of Philosophy degree in Organizational Psychology from the University of Michigan, and he completed it in less than 3 years. His Bachelor of Arts degree came from the Harvard University, where he earned magna cum laude with highest honors and 5 Beta Kappa honors. So for those of you who also graduated with honors, you can identify with him. He has earned awards for distinguished scholarly achievement from the Academy of Management, American Psychological Association, National Science Foundation, a former magician, junior Olympic springboard diver, and lives in Philadelphia with his wife and 2 daughters and son. So apparently a very well-rounded individual. And you can see why, from the learnings that you will get from his book, you would understand why we should listen to him because the credentials are really, really strong. So we start with this book. When he wrote this book, what he did was actually to look at research. He looked at 38 studies and 3,600 work units in 3 different fields to identify, which among the styles, giver or taker, are the most successful. So he looked at engineers, he looked at medical students, and he looked at salesmen. So if you're to guess, who falls at the bottom of the success ladder? Is it the giver? Is it the taker? Or is it something else, some other category? Maybe for some of you who have already read the book, you may want to share, or maybe not because you already read it. Okay, I see a lot of takers here, bottom of the ladder. I'm sure those people who answered takers probably read the book or maybe have an idea what the book is all about. Well, the answer is it's the giver. The giver is at the bottom of the ladder. If your answer is the giver, that is a correct answer to Ariel, because givers, typically they spend too much time giving and helping other people that they forget about themselves. So if I ask you another question, who is at the top of the ladder? So if the giver is at the bottom, who is at the top of the ladder? Sagot ni Ariel, giver. Nabasa mo na to, Ariel eh. Ang daya-daya mo naman eh. Esther also said, givers at the bottom and at the top of the ladder. Rico Santos probably also read the book or probably guessed it right. I don't know. But those who have a balance of giving and taking, that's also a good answer. Okay, so if I can get to the next slide, it will be so much easier. Sorry, yeah, I'm having a little bit of a technical. Ryan, is it possible if I stop sharing and you start sharing yours?
Sure.
Yeah.
Give me a moment. Okay, does everyone see my screen? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, and I apologies for that, for the technological misstep. So I earlier talked about two styles of reciprocity. One of them is a taker, one of them is a giver. And apparently there's a third one that's called the matcher, and that's actually that comprises a majority of who we are. And where most of the people in this room probably belong. And it's possible that it's also because of your profession, you know, maybe your career in the organization. You're probably forced to, you know, take on a mature reciprocity style. So conventional wisdom tells you that there are three main drivers of individual success. They will tell you it's hard work, you know, grit, talent, maybe luck. But actually, there's a fourth ingredient, and that's what we call the reciprocity style, or the social interactions of how we approach our interaction with other people. So we call them reciprocity styles. And at the opposite ends of the spectrum, you will see givers and takers. And so we have the taker. Let me just maybe just give a definition of what a taker is. Probably because of the name, you know what that is already. The taker, as the name implies, is someone who likes to get more than they can give. You know, he puts his interest ahead of others, because probably he believes that it's a competitive world out there. So it's a dog eat dog world. So he'd probably want to be able to move faster than everyone else and take his interest ahead of others. At the other end of the spectrum, you will find that there are givers as well. These are people who prefer to give more than they get, right? And at the middle, and like I said earlier, the most common is the matcher. These are people who have a balance. You know, they have this principle of fairness. You know, they believe that the world comprises of a balance of giving and taking. So tit for tat, you know, something like that. So that's a matcher, and typically about 60% of you know, if you take all the people in this room or any community, you will have a majority of matchers. So why is it that the giver will both fall at the bottom of the ladder, of the success ladder, and would also be the most successful among the group? So in the next slide, you will see that there's actually, it turns out that the givers in the long view, if you stretch out, you know, if you stretch out the time or the duration longer, you'll find that in the beginning, so if what Adam Grant did was he studied, you know, the three professions that I mentioned earlier, the med students, he studied engineers, and he studied salesmen. So for example, take the case of the med student. So in the first year of med school, much of the modules or the training or the teaching is actually more of like individually, you know, learning on your own. So if you're giving too much, or maybe teaching other people too much or helping them too much, then you will have very little time to actually do the things on your own that you needed to do, like learning and all of these other things that you needed to do in med school, like memorizing, learning, and all of these things. But as you go to the second or third year, or needing graduation, or in fact, when you graduate already and you take on residency, you will find that collaboration is actually going to be much more of the interaction, or much more of the teaching style, or what's encouraged in med school. So if you stretch out the timeline longer, you'll find that those who collaborate more, those who actually help other people more, are the ones who would be more successful in the long term. I mean, who, Dr. Lentino, who would want a doctor who's not a giver, right? Diba? Right. So, and also what we're also finding is that a giver in an organization actually creates more givers. So there's a ripple effect. So typically when you have a taker in an organization, you'll find that people will give less, because you'd be scared that you'd get abused. Some people will take advantage of you. But if there are more givers in an organization, for example, people will tend to give more. So it creates you're right, get good begets good. And also now, if you're in an organization now, like a company like Amway, for example, or in your current professions, you'll find that people, or the organizations, will actually put you in teams more. Actually, in Amway right now, if you're not part of a collapsible project team, you'd be scared, because nobody would want you to get you in a team. Because the leaner an organization gets, and the faster or the more agile an organization needs to get, you need to have people in collapsible project teams. And therefore, you would need to have more collaboration happening, more giving, more helping each other out. That's happening within teams. And therefore, as we have moved from like the early industrial age, where efficiency is the norm, like you're working in factories and all that, and we're moving towards a service economy where relationships, reputation, and collaboration is going to be more of the norm, then giving is actually the reciprocity style that will be more productive and more relevant in this new economy. So in the next slide, what you'd want to do is to find out how you can spot a giver or a taker. So what I'm going to show you right now are two photos, because I'm going to ask you to spot a taker. In the next slide, there are two photos of CEOs, right? One is a giver and one is a taker. So can you tell me which of the two, left or right, is the taker? If you tell, okay, Ian said left, looks like the taker. Okay, more of left as a taker. Yeah, everybody else, I don't know if one's copying from someone else or what. Right is the taker, left is the taker. Okay, now there's more right. So what? Just given the answers that you're giving me right now, it just looks like it's very difficult to spot a taker, right? If you're just looking at the physical, because some would say that, if the smile doesn't seem to be genuine, right? He's probably a taker. And how would you say if the smile is genuine? If the eyes are not, there's no, what you call that, crow's feet showing, probably the smile's not moving to the eyes, probably it's fake, right? Maybe if you wear more impressive clothes, you're probably a taker. You seem to be very aggressive or something like that, right? That's typically how you would categorize a taker. Just looking at the veneer, just looking at the physical appearance. In the next slide, you will find out that the person on the right is the taker. These are the photos of their annual reports. So the person on the right occupied the entire page of the chairman's page of the annual report, while that is actually Ken Lay of Enron. I don't know if you know Enron. You know Enron, right? So the company that went bankrupt because they uh, well got billions of pesos in insider trading. So yeah, and then the one on the left is John Huntsman. He's a very charitable giver. Can you see his photo in the annual report? Is really small. So now in this day and age, you don't even have to look at the annual report. In the next slide, you will see that actually there are a couple of things that that will distinguish a taker from a giver. In the animal kingdom, do you know what lekking actually means? When a peacock wants to show his dominance because it's mating season, and you will find that they will spread their feathers and, they will brandish, their multicolored feathers and all that. And that's actually lekking. So how to spot a taker when the world seems to revolve around him? He has the biggest voice. He's the most aggressive in the room. It would, whenever he speaks, he seems to take up the majority of the space, something like that. You would find that there are people with such great dominance, and lekking is something like that. You'd want to show your dominance, you'd want to show your power. In the animal kingdom, the one who makes the most is the one that makes the loudest sound or something like that, right? So that's how it is. And you'd also be able to spot the taker and how they treat others. So it says here, kiss up, kick down. So they seem to be very agreeable. They have a very, agreeable personality when it comes to their bosses. When the people who they're dealing with are, bigger than they are, they have bigger reputation, or they're more important, mga sip-sip daw, according to Rico Santos. That's correct. They would kiss up because they'd want to be able to create a network of people, of very important people, and they want to be part of that, right? But in the process, they would have to step on people's toes. They kick down, in the process of kissing up, they would use people. That's how, the way to find out is you ask their employees and you ask them, who are the people that you've met or who you've helped so far? And they'd probably tell this doctor from where, this president of like this and like that, but they wouldn't be able to mention any of the people from below them who they actually they work with or they help, and that's because they would try to be in this social circle where it's more beneficial for them. And you'll also find that their network ties, meaning in social media, you find I know it's so easy to spot now people who talk about themselves more, right, in social media. Would probably, well, of course, everybody wants to look good in social media, right? But you will find in their language, try to be more impressive or something like that, rather than just the normal, showing your passion or something like that. You'll find out more about, they talk about themselves instead of other people talking about them. Something, it reveals a lot. You're right, Ariel. In fact, if you're in HR or you're interviewing someone, you want to hire someone, the easiest way to spot a taker is you ask some of the people in their friends network or in their LinkedIn network and ask them about the person, and if there are cues, oh, she's a bit ambitious, something like that. And therefore you will probably get scared. You're probably hiring a taker. Okay, so in the next slide, you would want to study the approaches of successful givers, because we found that earlier that givers belong to the top of the success ladder, right? So how are they able to get to where they are? Right? How did they become successful as a giver? So you would want to study the giver in 4 key domains, and one of them is the networking domain. So usually when you do networking and you look at the people around you, you will have strong ties, you will have weak ties or dormant ties. The strong ties are the people who you already know. They're the small group of friends that have strong relationships with you. They're the ones who belong to, I mean, you move in this circle. These are your strong ties. What are the weak ties? The weak ties are the people who you know as an acquaintance. You probably have a little bit of a relationship with them, but very, very weak. And the dormant ties are the ties where, I mean, sometimes you move work, diba? So you've been close to some people, say 3 years ago, me, for example, 10 years ago in Mead Johnson, and now you're close to them, they're dormant, you'll still be close to them if you want to contact them in the future. They're called dormant ties because they're people who you've been close to or have strong relationships in the past. So how does being a giver give you the edge in terms of networking? Well, for givers, they would have cultivated relationships in the past, right? Strong relationships in the past, and they would have earned a reputation among their different ties, their weak ties, their dormant ties in the past. So if you want to actually get help or to be able to get something going, you tend to ask your strong tie because you know them already. However, since you move in the same circles, they won't be able to help you as much, right? So you go to your weak tie. And the weak tie would typically give you a more diverse set of people who you can ask help. Say, for example, I'm in HADSUP, for example, and I want to get a speaker for HADSUP who knows about more about e-commerce, for example. HADSUP is Health and Dietary Supplements Association. So if you move in the same circles, then you'd only you'd only know people who are in the same industry. But if you have weak ties with some people from the engineering or e-commerce industry, then you'd be able to seek help from them because your reputation as a giver will give you the edge that, okay, this person who's networking, who's seeking help from me, is not going to ask something in return. Because I'm a giver, the person you're asking help from will not have this this feeling that eventually what she's asking for, or if I give help, or if she gives help to me, there's something that she will ask for in return, something like that. So why is a giver style more successful in this manner? Because typically, if you're a matcher, you would only create ties with people who you can reciprocate. Meaning, if you have already, if you know that, say, for example, I'm going to contact Ryan because Ryan just happens to be in media, for example, I know that I have something to give him. So if I ask him a favor, I know that I can reciprocate. So your circle tends to be smaller. But if you're a giver, you would give however. I mean, it doesn't really matter who you talk to. I'd be a giver anyway. I'd go and build relationships with them, whether I get something in return or not. So therefore, there is an advantage if you are a giver. So how is it? How will a giver, or how, say for example, you're not a giver and you want to be able to increase your network? Actually, one of the easiest way is to practice the five-minute favor. If there's a favor that's being asked of you that can be accomplished in 5 minutes, why don't you do it? Because every time that you're able to help someone, even for just 5 minutes, that already increases your circle of influence. That already increases your reputation as of being a giver. So that's why in the long run, even if it's a slower burn, even if giving in the beginning will not give you the rewards immediately, in the long run, because what you're trying to do is establish relationships and establish a reputation that you're there to just help them, you're there to just give, then eventually in the long run, you'd be able to draw from that network, you'd be able to draw from that relationship. Okay, so there's another domain in the next slide that will help you as a giver help build organization. Earlier, we studied the impact of the giving style in the success of organizations. And we said that givers would typically expand on organization because because the giving style just happens to be able to be kept, good, right? So therefore, the more giving that you do, the more the people around you would give more. So it creates a ripple effect. As a leader, so I'm sure that a lot of you are actually leaders. One of the most important decisions that you can actually do for your organization is to make sure that you get the right people on the bus. If you're hiring or if you're forming teams, or if you're creating communities, one of the best decisions that you can do is actually getting the right people on the bus, or rather, you keep the wrong people off the bus, because as Adam Grant actually said, a bad apple can spoil the barrel more easily than a giver can improve on it. So which means that, if you have a taker there, it's actually easier for that organization to be in a paranoid state. So in the next slide, you will find that if there are more givers in the organization, rather than using it's my, it's for me, everything that I'm doing is for me and it's all about me, it now becomes all about we. It's we before me. Typically, whenever we talk about getting people in our organization, we want to be able to get people who are geniuses, the ones who are the best creators and all, and the ones with the best skills. But actually, because what you want to do is not for one person to be the best, but for the organization to produce more. You'd want to be able to get genius makers, right? And geniuses typically tend to be takers. They promote their own interests. They drain the intelligence of the people around them. They drain the energies of the people around them. But givers tend to be genius makers. They use their intelligence. They amplify the smarts of the other people and the capabilities of the other people. So what's happening is that if you have more of the genius takers, you're creating a psychologically safe environment. In Amway, actually, this Milind Pant, our CEO, has this mantra, and it's WGYB. Anybody knows what WGYB means? Okay, it means we got your back. In a safe environment, you can actually make mistakes, and learn from your mistakes, right? How can you be productive? How can you actually explore new directions, new ideas, if you always have this paranoia that if I make a mistake, I'd be fired. But if you have a psychologically safe environment where people can actually experiment, then it creates more of the genius maker. It expands, all the possibilities for your organization. You just have to make sure that the cost of the mistake is less than the value of the learning, right? So anyway, and also what you also would want to do if you want to be a giver is that you want to see beyond the perspective gap. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, because this is the typical mistake that we do. I'm also I also commit this error. I think of what's good for the other person based on my perspective. right? So say for example, gift giving. I like this this iPhone so much. It's probably what my daughter would want, and not iPhone. Siguro sabihin na lang natin this flask. Because from my perspective, it's so beautiful. This is probably what my friend would want to have. But if you have empathy, like what someone said in the chat room, if you put yourself in another person's shoes, you ask a question first, right? What does this other person actually need? What would he want to get, from me as a gift? That is shifting the perspective. Coming from instead of the perspective coming from you, you shift it to the other person. Okay, how am I in terms of time? 8:37. In the next slide, so we mentioned that, okay, there's one value of the domain where networking can give the giver an edge. The other one is about the collaboration or building the organization. The question thirdly, first, right? How do you build an organization? You'd want to be able to get, like I said, get the right people into your organization. So finding the diamond in the rough actually means that you spot the star or spot the diamond before they even become diamonds, right? I know that the word diamond is very relevant in this room. So how do you find the diamond in the rough? It's still not a diamond at this time. Maybe just a coal or carbon dioxide at this point in time. So in the next slide, there are a few tips, right, on how you can spot the talent. There's this theory of self-fulfilling prophecy. Probably I'll just share with you how the study went, right? So there are students, a couple of students that were put in certain groups. One of them is a group of, they call it bloomers. So teachers thought that this group are bloomers, and then they put another group that's not a bloomer, right? Not a bloomer group. And then they will find that every year the bloomer group will have increases in capacity, in capability, in IQ more than the non-bloomer group. But actually what's happening there is that the teacher who thought that that they're handling the bloomer group are actually taking care, supporting the students more, because they know that these people are the talented people, more than this set of students who are not identified as bloomers. And what they found is that actually in reality, the groups were assigned randomly. There's no real basis for them to become a bloomer group, part of the bloomer group or part of the non-bloomer group. What changed, and you will find that there was actually a significant difference between the bloomer group and the non-bloomer group, was because the teachers paid attention more to people that they thought were part of the bloomer group, because they thought that the students are talented. They actually paid attention more. They supported the students more. So that's why, if you give everybody a level playing field and you pay actually, support them regardless of whether they are bloomer or not, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You encourage them. There's this investment theory of intelligence where I don't know. I mean, as a company, we're actually at fault as well. We have talent development in organizations, right? And usually what you do in talent development is you spot the talent first, and then you put them in modules or training programs so that they can develop their talent more. Actually, it should be the reverse. Investment theory of intelligence means that you invest first and then they bloom later. But where do you invest? Where do you actually invest? Interest actually comes first, right? Interest actually comes first before you make the investment. So you spot people who had blooming interests in certain fields, for example. So what they found is that if you are so some of the talented pianists or such talented athletes, they probably had some raw skill in the beginning, but what they had compared to the others was the motivation. What they had was the initial interest. And then someone else from close to them, not necessarily the expert teacher, not necessarily the one who provided them with the most skill. The first person who honed their talent is the one that actually made the initial learning experience very rewarding, very pleasant. They'd love to go to the piano lessons more because when they were just starting, this piano teacher was very encouraging. I love it. They're making the learning fun. So that is actually the first investment that made the talent, the future talent, focus on, like the outlier, diba? The 10,000 hours. Because they were so interested. Because they want to pursue it, they just had grit. They just wanted to be resilient. They wanted to learn more. They want to really hone their talent more. So someone spotted them first, created that interest, but it's more because they were in the beginning, they showed the interest or the motivation in this particular area or field. So bottom line is, don't count people out. They just don't seem to be in the beginning, the talent that you thought they are, they're not the talents that you thought, they could be. It will become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you actually, in the beginning, already nurture them, support them and all that, and believe in them even before they start exhibiting the talent that you wanted. Okay, in the next slide, it's the other domain where givers can actually have an edge is in the domain of influencing. So typically, when you probably rate some people, when it comes to influence or power, you'd probably think that the person with the most dominance in terms of the trait or in terms of like communicating will be the person who would be, would bear the most influence, right? In reality, what Adam Grant found in his research is that people who are exhibiting the power of powerless communication is the one that actually have better or have the more influence. There's a difference between dominance and prestige. Of course, dominance. Dominance is where you have this assertive speech. You focus on yourself. You take a lot of space, etc. You have the veneer of really being the authority or the credible authority. That's the dominant type of communication. There's this other type of communication that's called prestige type of communication. Prestige, I had to look for the definition in the dictionary, because prestige actually means widespread respect and admiration felt for someone or something on the basis of a perception of them, of their achievements and quality. So there's a difference between dominance and prestige. In the next slide, we will learn how we can actually develop the powerless communication. One of them is vulnerability. Vulnerability, if a leader is more relatable, because I just want to relate in our Leading with the Founders Growth Mindset module in Amway. We are actually taught to be to exhibit vulnerability and humility so that people will relate with you more as a leader. It's so difficult. People will fear you, diba? But if you show a little bit of humanity, like share with them the mistakes that you learn. I mean, learnings from the mistakes. You're human. In fact, in Adam Grant's study, he said that if you're already skilled, you're already an expert in your field, and you spilled coffee, for example, or you made a little bit of your stuttering or made a little bit of mistake, or something like that. people will actually relate with you more because, okay, I can do that. Okay, he's an expert, but he spills coffee, right? He spilled it right before he went on stage. Okay, so he becomes more relatable to me. So that's the practice of vulnerability. Another is actually asking questions. So you don't have all the answers, right? And that's actually true. Even if you're an expert, you don't have the answers. So what they're finding is that people who are the best salesmen, who are the best consultants, they ask the questions first. They would want to find out more from the other person so that they'll be able to not just to give or to help, but to be able to provide the best solution. So you ask questions. Asking questions, typically you would veer away from asking questions because you'd want to present yourself as an expert, right? But if you're asking questions, whether that question is you will show a bit of your ignorance, it's okay because you don't know everything, right? There's also the practice of the technique of tentative talk. So some people, they want to be able to contribute an idea or assert themselves, but they don't want to come off as being too assertive, right? So the tentative talk is something like, you'd ask them, oh, I'm thinking of this idea. What do you think of this idea? It's probably it's like asserting an idea, but you're asking a question. It's a tentative idea. You're asking them whether it's good or bad. So it's actually tentative. It's not telling them, okay, try this one. This seems good. I thought about it, and I've researched it, and this is the best idea. Try tentative talk. The other like signs of tentative talk is when some people say in their speech. Sometimes that's tentative. You know why? Because, like I said in the beginning, people actually will be able to relate with you more if you're a little bit more human, if you are a little bit more approachable. So the power of like the sometimes you will have like words like, oh, it's really, really good. Really, really is not very authoritative, like what do you call this, adjective, right? But really, really shows you what's in your heart. It's making you more human. So that kind of tentative talk is actually more powerful. It seems powerless, but it is powerful because what is the end objective? Influencing. Okay, like as in I like you, I like you. Maybe pwede stuttering is actually okay. Actually, there's an example. I would want you to read the book because the value of the book is about examples. And one of them is about this lawyer. Okay, he's a stuttering lawyer, and and the defense lawyer. So he's the prosecutor, and the defense lawyer was a really great speaker. He's a dapper, in terms of like, the way he looks, very slick and all that. So, but he stutters. And so in the beginning, he's so scared because although he had a few, credible wins with him. I mean, he's won a few cases, and this lawyer is also very impressive. In the end, he actually won the case because the jurors found that beneath the veneer of the stuttering, there's actually this credibility because, he stutters and yet it's okay. I mean, he's displaying his stuttering in this courtroom and it's okay. He's still defending people, right? So that could be good as well. So so that gives me a bit of comfort because I stutter and I do a lot in my speeches. So okay, yeah, powerless communication. Thank you for that. Okay, in the next slide, actually baka nga hindi natin ma-cover lahat, Ryan, kasi parang I think I speak too much. So we know now that givers are people that you need to take care of in the organization. But why is it that some of them are actually in the bottom of the ladder, right? Because some of them actually are selfless givers, they just burn out. And some of them are on fire, they just proceed, move on to become successful. So how do we make sure that we take care of the givers in our organization? So in the next slide, sorry, Ryan, let me know if I need to stop. Avoiding burnout. There are people who are selfless givers. Okay, they just give too much, right? But if they don't see the impact of what they're doing, right? Is it doing any good? Is the people I'm helping, are they improving? Is the organization improving? Are we being more productive? Is this charitable work that I'm doing getting seeing more impact? If I don't see that, I will actually suffer from a burnout. There's also this point about changing the context, meaning I keep doing things over and over again. And if I don't change the context, meaning, okay, this one I keep teaching, teaching, and teaching. But sometimes what I actually need to do, because I'm a giver, is create change, have another initiative that changes the context, that where I can put my energy on. So say, for example, I'm a teacher. I keep, I have students who I really want to help, and I'm spending a lot of time in that kind of work. But during weekends, I have this group of people that where I can, volunteer. And we're doing a lot of good things. We're helping, prepare food. We're helping, all this charitable that work that you're doing. Just change the context. It re-energizes you, because burnout happens when you just keep doing all those little helping things that you're doing, right? That's why there's also the concept of chunking. Whenever you do charity work, sometimes you sprinkle, for example, you sprinkle your random acts of kindness, actually. But what they're finding is that to avoid burnout and for you to see a greater impact, you chunk it. Instead of doing those small random acts of kindness, you actually chunk it into one big act of kindness, because that's where the biggest impact is going to be felt. If you give, give na lang lahat, diba? Something like that. And then, whenever whatever you're doing is giving a sense of enjoyment and purpose, and you're within a network that's being supportive when you're already near burnout, but you have this support group around you, like what you're doing right now. I know that's why I admire this group so much, because I know that, for example, Ariel Ambek, for example, I hear you when you were helping out people, your downlines and signing up and all that, taking on that responsibility, and you're probably burning out. You said, pahinga na ako. But you have this community around you who actually are supporting you. That's why this support, oh nga, I have the same problem, I have the same issue. How did you do it? How did you help, how did they help you, or something like that. You have a network of people who you can ask help from. And you can ask questions. So how did you address this issue? Something like that. That's how you avoid burnout. Next, baka hindi ko matapos. But the dormant effect, siguro next slide na lang. Overcoming the dormant effect. So sometimes the dormant effect happens when you get abused by a taker, for example. You wouldn't know because you're a giver, but you just keep giving. So sometimes you can't help it. There are takers who would take advantage of you. So there's what you call otherish giving, where you screen takers, or takers who are agreeable, takers who are fakers because they want to get something from you, right? So there's a way to do that. Like I said earlier, pwede sa social media, and then, or pag nakita mo na, inaabuso na ako nito parang anong pwede kong gawin, right? So you screen them and you create a more flexible style. You probably would become a matcher. Itit for tat mo na, okay, I give you this, you give me that, Parang ganon. So you become a matcher. You will change or you will you change your flexibility style. You start with trust first and then you adjust later, right? But since you're a giver, you can actually shift back to being a giver once the taker has learned this lesson kasi hindi mo na siya tinutulungan, right? So, and then one more thing, kasi sometimes when you're a giver, you're so afraid to ask for a favor kasi you're a giver, you do want to give, but not take or not receive something. It's easier for you if you have someone to advocate for that where you can actually benefit from too. So say for kaya may mga advocacy groups kasi puro givers kayo and then if you parang if you are able to get a benefit from that advocacy group because you advocate from them, then good. One example was, someone who's so afraid to ask for for a bigger salary when he was being hired, but he was able to advocate for his family. I had to negotiate. I have loans for my student loans. I need to cover for that. So when you think about others, okay, I probably won't do it for myself because I will not ask that favor, but I have a family, a family that I need to help. So I will need to ask for a bigger salary. Okay, expanding the pie only means that you include other people in that giving network. Parang shortcut ko na kasi actually in the next slide about the Scrooge shift. Next slide na lang, Ryan. So, so to develop a norm of giving in the in your group, you have to be able to create a group where the giving becomes a norm. So example lang to, because for example in Amway, kasi I belong to Amway and we just actually are rolling out the culture transformation. So if you're in a culture where giving or where asking help or being part of a project is now part of the norm, you have to be able to contribute, and people will need to you create a reputation around giving, then people who are takers would now become part of that norm, would now have to give because he will need to be able to build a reputation of being a giver, right? So it's 8:59. Sorry, a common ground. You have to build a common ground and a common identity around your team, around a certain advocacy, right? Actually, ito lang. Honestly, because one of the books that I read over and over again is the Bible. And actually, there's nothing new. This give and take is not an original idea. If you've been reading the Bible as I do, Luke 6:27-36, when he said, "Love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great." Actually, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. In closing, of course, this is about giving, right? And typically what you'd want to do is to put the givers out of the shadows. And you'd want this to be a culture revolution shift because there's just too many takers in the world right now, right? And we'd want to have a revolution. This is a radical idea. I know that, in the 90s, in the 80s, and ever since we had this industrial revolution, it's all about taking. So the first thing that I want to do in this group first is to recognize the givers in this group. And to recognize the givers, I'd like people who are organizing this CZG crash course to be recognized. If you are organizing this group right now, this crash course, and have contributed books and shared books, I applaud you. Please applaud people who've shared books already and who have shared learnings already, because that is a form of giving. And my observation lang, because I've been in Amway for 17 years, and what I've observed is that the people with the highest pins are the ones with the biggest hearts. because they actually help more people. They have more legs because they help more people. Honestly, the only way that you can find the diamond in the rough is to help more of these people who are future diamonds. That's how our founders diamonds and our like Ryan and Oli Fernandez, give them a round of applause. They're the biggest pins in this room right now. Ariel and Ambek Driz, diamonds. That's the reason that they're diamonds, because they're the most generous people in this room right now. So I have to give them all, the round of applause. Thank you very much. To all the givers in this community. We love you. Please continue giving because that's exactly what the world needs right now. Thank you very much and mabuhay po sa inyong lahat.
Wow, thank you, Miss Lenny. What a heartfelt and very passionate book sharing. By the way, Miss Lenny, can you do a part 2? There's been a lot of chat that
I
at your
know.
most convenient time. So
Sure.
we really welcome that.
Sure. Yeah, I can give more
Okay.
examples. Actually,
Yeah.
I was intending to align, the founders' growth fundamentals that I was talking about, lead with heart, live to serve, and love to learn, with what I just shared, because there's just so much parallel between the two. And
Okay.
if you still welcome me after this boo boo or whatever I did, yeah, I will definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Thank you
Ryan
for
will
having
just
me.
finalize the schedule with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. Love
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much.
So friends, kindly hit your reaction button if you really appreciate and learn a lot tonight. So thank you once again, Miss Lenny.
Thank
But I
you.
think we have some time to answer questions.
Yeah, if
Probably we
you're
could
still okay.
entertain 2 or 3 questions.
Okay.
So anybody will take the first one? Yeah, there's been a lot of messages in the chat box. Thank you, Miss Lenny.
Thank you. Yeah, I know I can feel the love actually. That's giving the love. Appreciation is actually a form of giving.
Looks like there will be a lot of givers after this because there's no
Yeah,
question.
no
They're really,
questions. Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Either they read the book already and finding the anyway, yeah. Yeah, or I mean you're in Amway, some of you are. I mean, if you are in Amway, you know how to give. You know how to give.
So there's a question from Sir Titos. If you're going to start with Amway again, what would you do differently?
Oh, a lot. I was a taker. Some of you know me in the beginning. What I would do differently, actually, what I do more of is actually inclusion. Means that entertaining, inviting more people in the ideas, because the only way that you'd be able to expand and explore more about how to grow Amway is by including more people and including more ideas. I think that's having more forum to hear people out.
Thank you. Okay, no more
No
questions.
question. Yay! Thank you. You're so kind.
I think
Because I'm not the expert for this book. Ask Adam Grant. If you have a question, ask Adam Grant.
I think that they are reserving their questions on the part 2 of your session,
Thank
probably.
you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
before we go to our breakout rooms for some sharing on what really impacted you from this event, we'll have some few announcement. We will have our No Borders project business plan this coming Sunday, 8 p.m.
Oh.
So take note of the day, Sunday, 8 p.m. I think the meeting ID is still the same. So, okay, then just a reminder that there will be a breakout room late. So just wait for a window to pop up, then just click join. So if you don't know what's your breakout room number, so you will notice that there are numbers after the name. So just ask Ryan or the person who invited you, or if you need help in assigning the breakout to the correct breakout room, just ask for help from Ryan or from Jonel. Okay, see you all in the breakout rooms.
Thank
I know this
you.
will be an exciting sharing.
Thank you. Bye.